I was encouraged in a lot of areas tonight. I just finished telling those guys, I thought, we did a good job with the turnover takeaways. Thought we ran the ball. Thought we defended the run well. Certainly would have liked to have won, but I was pleased with pretty much most of that game. I was a little disappointed at the end of the half. I felt we had time left. Obviously, they felt that we didn't. It's pretty easy to get right, and I think they missed it. But
that was Sean Payton after the Broncos' 21-20 loss Saturday night in their second preseason game, this one to the 49ers up at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. We're going to talk about it all tonight on the Not Another Bucking podcast. I'm Nick Kosmider, your host, joined by producer Matt, who happens to also be my brother. We are going to get into it all. The thing about the Broncos going into tonight was there was a couple of main attractions. There was Javonte Williams making his return from ACL surgery that he had shortly after his injury in early October of 2022. Not quite yet 11 months since that occurred. He's playing in his first preseason game, ends up touching the ball on his first 4 plays of the game. He drops the screen pass they set up for him. Nerves probably going quite a bit. Sean Payton said he gave him a little bit of a hard time after that. But then had a carry and 2 other catches among the next 3 plays. I really only one of those plays was designed. He ended up kind of being the third option on a couple of the pass plays. But, he got right into the mix right away. And if you're, I think for him, he said, I like the fact that this is now out of the way feels good. Like this, when you're coming back from ACL injury, to play in a preseason game before the week 1 opener, like this was his last big test. Like, to me, Matt, there's not like a ton you can take away. Like he had these carries, coming back for the route on the Russell Wilson scramble. Saw him do that in training camp a couple times over the last few weeks. Something he's pretty comfortable with. But outside of that, it was just, hey, like, let's just get this guy the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, after the game, he said he's 100% and that he was feeling really good. He said, going into that first tackle, he was nervous, thinking it was going to hurt, but then he pops right back up. He's like, all right, we're just playing football again. Yeah. So, I mean, that's obviously very encouraging. He was he was looking shifty out there on the field. He looked really good. And that third down completion where he runs the little hitch route, comes back for Wilson. That's kind of a staple of Sean Payton's offenses. Sometimes you get those running backs that can run patterns out on the outside, the Darren Sproles kinds of players running backs who make plays downfield and present matchup difficulties for the defense. If Javonte Williams can kind of expand that aspect of his game, it's just one more thing you got to worry about back there.
Yeah. I mean, Sean Payton's offenses over his 15 years in New Orleans, like his teams were top 5 in running back targets almost every single year. Like, they were number 1 numerous times. They're top 3 almost. I mean, just consistently, they are the team that is at the top of the league in using their running backs in the pass game. And so the fact that Javonte Williams had 4 catches, I mean, this is a guy like that. He was progressing toward being that guy last season, right? He had 11 receptions in the season opener against Seattle. Like, that can be his. I mean, because he has good awareness. He has just good a sense of when his quarterback kind of needs him to relocate. Is good at that. He has good hands. Again, like that the drop on the screen, I just think was all adrenaline, all nerves, all that kind of stuff. Sean Payton kind of laughed that off because I think they think the same, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, it was another running back that stole the show. It was Javonte Williams' return, but the main takeaway after this game is Jaleel McLaughlin. A week ago, a little more than a week ago, the Broncos come out with their unofficial depth chart because the league says you have to right before the week of the preseason game. 5 running backs in the room. He's number 5 on the depth chart, even though a lot of us are saying that. I mean, I think that's more of a like, hey, he's an undrafted rookie. We're not giving him anything. And then he doesn't get on the field until the last series against the Cardinals, proceeds to gain 32 yards on 4 touches and score, the go-ahead touchdown in that limited amount of time. Well, tonight he gets on the field in the second quarter, and all he does is have 45 yards on 7 carries. Runs in for an 8-yard touchdown, has a 17-yard run, catches a 9-yard touchdown pass, has a 44-yard kickoff return. All told, has 97 all-purpose yards in his limited action. Like, you're not keeping this guy off the team.
No, and I mean Sean Payton talked about it after the game. He's like, if anybody who's been watching practice, you're not surprised. Like, he's been doing this in camp, and like this is what they've come to expect from him. This is just kind of one of his first chances to show it on the field, and boy did he! Like that first touchdown run, like he broke the man's ankles. Like that was a thing of beauty that you don't see very often in the NFL. So like that was awesome. I mean, the dude, he was decisive, he was quick in and out of those, he was explosive. Like, he's definitely going to be somebody that you have to find ways to get him on the field and get the ball in his hands so that he can make some plays for you.
Yeah, I thought our friend of the program, Ryan Harris, calling the game for the 9 News telecast there, on the 9-yard catch, which was his second touchdown of the game there in the fourth quarter. He catches it and he like kind of stops like on a dime, and Ryan goes like, I can't even stop that fast when I'm only walking. And he was running, and it's just like, and he just did it so smooth. And I thought Ryan said it well on the broadcast, like, he doesn't play like a rookie. And part of it is like so experienced in college, even though he did not play at the FBS level. He did not play at the highest level of college football. He was a guy that just, I mean, so many opportunities. Like, they just fed this guy at both of his stops, including at Youngstown State, where he played his last couple seasons, to become the NCAA's all-time rushing leader. Like, you don't achieve those kind of things if you don't know what you're doing. And he's just like, there was his big 17-yard run in the third quarter, like just sort of the eel-like shiftiness where he is like seeing a spot ahead of where this linebacker's coming, and he's able to like shift without losing any kind of speed like that. That's some rarity. And it's always with me, like, how do these guys not get drafted? Like, I don't understand how these guys, and I understand running back's a fungible position and all that kind of stuff, but man, he's gonna make the team. So anyway, so like that creates interesting choices for the Broncos, because you have Williams, you have P. Ryan, those are your 2 guys. Perhaps he could be your third down guy. But as you noted, Matt, Michael Burton, the fullback, that guy's going to be on the team.
Yeah, Burton came in on 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1 and converted both of those carries. He also had some really good blocks and pass protection, and so did Samaje Perine. Like, on one of Russell Wilson's 3rd down scrambles, Samaje Perine had an absolute pancake of a block and pass protection, and that dude's running hard too. So while Jaleel McLaughlin's definitely going to be on this team, I still think Samaje Perine's your number 2 back. He's your change of pace bruiser that is going to be getting a lot of carries in this offense as well.
Yeah. I think he and Javonte Williams will be pretty interchangeable. They're very similar in the way that they run the ball. It's kind of uncanny, really physical. But I think that's another thing you have there is like you have two guys that are really good in pass protection. Those two front guys. But if McLaughlin can add kick returning to his thing, like, we know that the punt returner is either going to be Marvin Mims, who another guy who made his debut, right? The rookie second round pick, didn't play last week, played tonight. Had a catch from Stidham early on, or
it was from Russell. It was still on the first drive from Russell.
Yeah, it's like that drive was so long, he started to lose like who was on the field at that point. But he went back for his first 2 punt returns, and they were both shanks by the punter. And the second one, he comes off the field being like, but anyway, he's going to be your punt returner, or Montrell Washington. If he finds a way to crack the roster, he'll be the punt returner. But if Washington can be that kick returner, that adds another element from him. So those are I think the main takeaways was getting Williams back, McLaughlin. The other thing was Russell Wilson, right? I was a little bit surprised because Sean Payton comes in and he says, hey, we're going to play our starters 20 to 24 plays. And the bulk of them did. Russell Wilson was an exception. He quarterbacked that opening 13 play, 45-yard drive, which ended in a Brett Maher field goal. Maher made both of his kicks after missing 2 last week. And then he came out, and Sean Payton said afterwards that was the plan. We for Wilson, he's going to get those 15 plays because we wanted Jarrett to have some plays with the first team that was going to stay out there for a little while. But what was just your impression of Wilson in the time that he had?
The big thing was that he just came across as really decisive, and that's kind of when we talked about the preseason and what we want to see from Russell Wilson is we want to see him making those decisions quickly, getting the ball out of his hand, or if it's going to be something where he decides to run, is making that decision and sticking to it. And a couple of his runs, it was drop back, the pockets started to get a little bit tight, so he takes off immediately. Very decisive, good choice on those plays. Made a couple of big conversions with his leg, even with the read option that ended up getting called back for holding. Like the defense then bites down hard on the running back. That is absolutely the read you want Russell Wilson to make. It's also a little scary when Russell Wilson gets hit as he's going out of bounds there. You prefer not to take too many of those, especially in the preseason. But I mean, that was something that was really encouraging to see from Russ, just kind of how quick he's making those decisions, and that he seems like he has a good understanding of where he wants to go with the ball.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And you worry, like you mentioned the one on the sideline getting hit, but I worry less about him, like to your point, being decisive and making that choice that I'm dictating that I'm going to run, as opposed to like the defense is dictating that to me. That is what I thought he was missing last year. Like I mentioned, he only had that many rushing yards in 3 of his 15 games last year that he had on the first drive tonight.
Right.
So that just kind of goes to show you, and it was just, he was in control. It was like the Russell Wilson that you remember. Like the first one was a 3rd and 6. He drops back. I think they have 2 receivers in the formation because there was a play action involved, and right away, like he just recognizes that, okay, hey, I see this wide open, and in his mind, it's just, hey, first down, we will convert this. And I think that's been so much of this is just like, make the play that will allow us to continue the drive. And I think he's shown in the preseason and in training camp, like a better just grasp of that. And again, it's not like he's known this. Like this is who Russell Wilson is. I think it's almost like we view him through this prism of like, oh, he's this broken guy, and he's being like, he knows how to do this stuff. Like he's done it for a long time. It's just, it was so bad last year that you watch it with this fine-tooth comb, this close-up lens of like, okay, is he getting rid of some of that happened last year? And he's not going to do it to the degree that he did. I think some of the when he commits and he scrambles, he still has speed to cause you problems. I think where he's not as effective that he was earlier in his career is like when he's like scrambling around, doing the reverse spins, going backwards, like where he was athletic enough to just evade these like, massively athletic, massively huge pass rushers. I don't think he can beat you so much in that way, but if he is decisive, he still can be a major threat with his legs.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, the big scrambles that he had today was when he climbed the pocket forward. Yep. So you have the heavy rush coming around the outside. He climbs the pocket forward, which is something that like Steve Young used to do a lot, but you don't see a ton of quarterbacks who are really good at just scrambling forward. A lot of, especially younger quarterbacks, like to find the edge, try to run around guys. But when you get those quarterbacks who can scramble forward and make a play directly forward, suddenly 5-6 yards down the field is a lot easier to get because you're not having to run 30 yards around the outside to get it.
Yeah.
So it looks a lot better when that kind of stuff is
too. Like that's what Sean Payton's always wanted. Like be strong in the middle. Like if they're driving a truck through, like Ben Powers has had some protection problems these first 2 games, but he's a road grader in terms of like in these situations can like get you a hole in the middle.
Right.
And that's what we saw. So we've talked about Russell Wilson. We've talked about, Marvin Mims making his debut, Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. One of the other key sequences in this game, because, again, we're talking about a Broncos loss, a game they probably don't lose if they convert this first half situation. Yeah. They were set up to have a really good 2-minute situation. They'd gotten the stop. They get the punt, kind of similar to last week, and they're going down the field, and Jarrett Stidham hits, as time running down, hits Jalen Virgil for a 50-yard play, gets down to the 1-yard line. Jalen Virgil gets hurt on the play, but gets to the line of scrimmage. they get down and believe. And Sean Payton in the post game multiple times said, "I believe we spiked it." He said it went up to the booth. They said, "Hey, there was no more time left. There wasn't 1 second left on the clock." He said, "But it was so quick. He was wondering whether people had flights to catch or whatever." Which is Sean Payton being Sean Payton.
Yeah.
But it's just it again goes to show just like the margin for error with this thing that they're trying to do of like get more efficient at some of these things. That I mean, you look back on it in a 1 point game like that. That was probably the big game right there.
Yeah, and Jalen Virgil he had the opportunity to get out of bounds if he wanted to. On the play, he was incredibly close to getting it into the end zone. He went for the score, didn't quite get it. But usually, if you have about 15 seconds, that's kind of usually your cutoff for when you think that if the player's in bounds, we can get down there, we can clock the ball and get another play off. And they had 19 seconds at the start of that play, so you're probably thinking in the huddle, okay, we can get down there, we can spike it, we got plenty of time. But that's a 50-yard play.
Yeah,
so now you're asking your big guys to run 50 yards down the field and get that spike off, and that's a different ask. So the situational football on that one's kind of puts you in a tough spot because you're thinking we got time to clock it, but that ends up being real close.
Right, and it's like, and you don't hate him going for the score if he thinks right. Because it's like if you go out of bounds, it is just a field goal. So you're saying right. It's something of an all or nothing gamble, and I don't really know that he's computing those things in his head at that moment, like this, like what he's going for. But so again, you don't fault the player for thinking that he can get to the end zone, and he almost did. Had he broken the tackle, the key thing is we didn't really hear after the game whether that injury is going to be anything significant. I don't think Jalen Virgil is a lock to make this roster or wasn't, and if he's hurt, that'll certainly hurt his chances. But man, that guy is fast. Like he saw it against the Cardinals. He had the receiver speed run around, 25-yard gain on that. This is a 50-yard play. He had a 66-yard touchdown on his very first reception last year against the Titans in his very first game. This is a guy that he's got a different level of speed. So right. You hope he's okay. But so yeah, some of that situational stuff. And then again, they had a chance to right their wrong defensively, right? We know that they scored last week with a minute and a half left to go up 6. The Cardinals had 2 timeouts left, right? So the Cardinals had 2 timeouts left, and they end up driving 75 yards in 90 seconds and get the 2-point conversion. So the Broncos are faced with the same thing. They punt. 49ers get the ball at their own 22-yard line. 2:01 to go. They pressure Trey Lance into an incompletion on his first down. So basically, they're coming out of the 2-minute warning. 2nd and 10 for San Francisco at their own 22-yard line. Broncos are in position to win, and then they just lose Ronnie Bell twice. Get busted on a run play where they kind of feel like they stuff it inside, but Tyrion Davis-Price just goes to the outside, and now they're in field goal range. Disappointing way to end it.
For sure. And if you're able to stop the run there at the end, you're going to get the ball back with maybe 50 seconds or so after your timeouts and have a chance yourself to kind of go back down with Ben DiNucci. But unfortunately, they weren't able to stop the run.
In a tougher position. He kicked a 32-yarder that barely squeezed through the right. He had missed 2 field goals in their opener against the Raiders. So it wasn't
an extra point tonight.
Yeah. So again, kicking issues for teams across the league, there's tons of teams that are having competitions. They drafted that kid in the 3rd round. I always think that's clearly you like the guy, but man, when you're a drafted kicker, it puts a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
And it seems like Jake Moody's feeling that quite a bit.
If you're not Sebastian Janikowski kicking 65-yarders, you're going to get the question of why the heck do we spend this much draft capital here?
Right. So, but anyway, it was interesting because Sean Payton talked this week about winning matters. That's just sort of the culture that we want to try to instill. We're not okay with losing just because it's the preseason. But he did come in to the press conference tonight, seemingly with not a sunny disposition, but I think more pleased with some of the things that he saw. That they did protect better. They did run the ball even more effectively than they did last week, which I thought they had ran it pretty well a week ago. They more or less bottled up San Francisco's run game outside of the boot action that they got beat on quite a bit on that first drive. So there's a lot of things to like tonight, I think, if you're a Broncos fan. And now the starters are probably done. If not done, they won't play a lot against the Rams, especially having 2 joint practices this upcoming week. So from here, it's kind of fine tuning until September 10th.
Yeah, I guess if we're talking about closing up with the kickers real quick, Riley Dixon and Brett Maher both did have better games tonight.
Yeah.
Both looked pretty good. Riley Dixon's had a 61-yarder, I think, and then another punt later where it got muffed, and Denver was able to recover that. So, and Maher made his field goals and his extra points tonight. So, much better showing from the kickers in this game for Denver, which is good because they're going to need that going into the season.
Yeah, Riley Dixon, I think, averaged 60.3 yards on his 4 punts. Maher, as you mentioned, all 4 of the kicks that came off his right foot went through the uprights, and that's ultimately the bottom line of what you're looking for. So, yeah, again, it was just like kind of a microcosm of the improvement that they saw. There was a lot of things that were better. And again, it comes down to like a last-second drive where the majority of those defensive players in the field probably aren't going to be on the roster. So you can't spend a ton of time, like if that's how you lose, spending, going over too much about how it went down and worrying about that. So coming up this week, the Broncos get back to practice. They'll have meetings tomorrow, Sunday. I think that's what day it is. Yeah, they'll have meetings on Sunday. Monday off. They'll get back to practice Tuesday, and then on Wednesday and Thursday they'll welcome the Rams into town before playing them on Saturday. So again, just sort of some final tune-ups, Matt. We're 3 weeks away from the NFL season. It's quickly approaching. But we'll be back middle of the week with another podcast, kind of breaking it down. Looking forward to these practices with the Rams and what the Broncos could take out of that. But until then, we appreciate you guys listening in, watching on YouTube, subscribing, Spotify, Apple, wherever else you get your podcasts. Please keep listening, subscribe, give us a review, let us know what you think, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.